There is an ancient fear buried deep within the stones of our mountains, a fear that the villagers of Bukovina and Transylvania have carried in their souls for generations. It was not the fear of wolves, nor of thieves, but the fear of the sky itself. They said that when the clouds turned the color of ice, a Solomonar had just dismounted his dragon. Who were these men truly? The Solomonars were not mere common sorcerers. They were a mystical caste, believed to inherit the lost secrets of the ancient Dartine priests. They wandered through villages disguised as tattered beggars, secretly testing the kindness of strangers. But behind those rags hid a power that could wipe out an entire harvest in a single hour. A relentless storm of hail was the price for those who turned them away. Legend says you were not born a Solomonar. You were chosen from 1,000 young men. Only the strongest crossed the threshold of Skolomons, the secret school hidden beneath the depths of a bottomless lake. There, for 7 long years, the apprentices never saw the light of the sun. They learned the language of every living creature on earth. And most importantly, they learned how to bind and unbind the dragons of the storm. Each Solomonar carried a wooden bag that held the weight of the world. Inside were the forbidden tools of a forgotten craft. The first was the golden axe, forged in fires that no common man could light. With a single strike towards the sky, the Solomonar could split a thunderhead in 2. But the most dreaded tool was the small, weathered book of spells. It was called the Solomonars, a grimoire that contained the true names of the wind. They say that if a regular person were to read even a single line, their mind would shatter like glass. The Solomonar would whisper to the pages, and the breeze would turn into a gale. Then there was the rein made of birch bark. This was not for a horse, but for something far more ancient and terrifying. When a hailstorm was needed to punish a greedy village, the Solomonar would climb to the highest mountain peak. He would cast the rain into a bottomless lake and whistle a low, haunting melody. From the dark depths, the water would begin to boil and churn. The Balor, the cloud dragon, would rise, scales glistening like wet slate. The Solomonar would bridle the beast with his birch rein and lead it through the sky. As the dragon's tail thrashed through the clouds, giant chunks of ice would fall upon the earth. To the peasants below, it looked like a natural disaster. But those who knew the signs could see a lone figure riding amidst the lightning, a man in white, steering the fury of the heavens with a piece of wood and a silent prayer. The journey to becoming a master of clouds began in the dark. The Skolomons was not a school of stone and mortar, but a cathedral of shadows hidden deep within the earth. It was located in the heart of the mountains, near a black lake where the sun's rays never reached. Only 7 students were admitted at a time, chosen by a force that no one dared to name. For 7 long years, these young men lived in total isolation. They forgot the warmth of the sun and the faces of their mothers. The earth became their only world, and the silence of the cave their only teacher. They lived on nothing but the knowledge passed down from the great master, the first Solomonar. In the darkness, their eyes changed, learning to see things that are invisible to common men. They studied the rhythmic pulse of the earth and the shifting weight of the atmosphere. They learned to read the stars through the cracks in the cave ceiling. Each day was a battle against madness, as the secrets of the universe were carved into their souls. But the graduation from Skolomons came with a terrifying price. When the 7 years were over, only 6 of the students were allowed to return to the surface. The seventh student, the most brilliant of them all, was claimed by the school itself. He was destined to stay in the darkness forever, serving as the aide for the great master. He would become the keeper of the dragons, the one who prepared the reins for the others. The remaining 6 would walk out into the light, forever changed, forever marked. They were no longer men, but living conduits for the ancient powers of the planet. When they finally stepped onto the mountain grass, the very air around them began to hum with electricity. They were now Solomonars, and the sky was waiting for their command. But they walked with a heavy heart, knowing that one of their brothers would never see the sunrise again. This was the pact made with the mountain, power in exchange for a soul. Despite their godlike power over the heavens, the Solomonars chose to walk among men in silence. They did not wear robes of gold or carry scepters of power. Instead, they appeared at the edge of a village as tattered, dusty beggars. With a wooden bowl in their trembling hands, they would knock on the doors of the wealthy and the poor alike. This was the test of the soul, a moment that decided the fate of an entire community. The Solomonar would ask for a simple piece of bread or a cup of cold water. He did not need the food to survive, for he was fed by the mountain itself. He was looking for the heart of the village, hidden behind closed doors and locked gates. In the old stories of Bukovina, there was a tale of a village that saw only a dirty stranger. The rich landowners set their dogs upon him and laughed as he retreated into the shadows. And as the man reached the hilltop, he did not look back with anger, but with a cold, divine duty. He opened his tattered bag and whispered a name into the wind. Within minutes, the scorching summer heat vanished, replaced by an unnatural, freezing chill. A wall of black clouds swallowed the sun, and the sky began to scream. Great jagged stones of ice, the size of a man's fist, fell upon the fields of those who had denied him. By sunset, the wealth of the village lay shattered and buried under a white shroud of ruin. But for those who opened their hearts, the Solomonar was a silent guardian. A poor widow who shared her last crust of bread might find her fields untouched by the fiercest storm. The hail would stop exactly at her fence line, as if held back by an invisible wall. The Solomonar would leave as quietly as he arrived, leaving no footprints in the dust. He was the judge and the jury of the mountains, a wandering ghost testing the morality of man. To be kind to a stranger was not just a virtue, it was a survival instinct. For you never knew if the man asking for water was a simple traveler, or the master of the dragon that was currently sleeping behind the nearest cloud. In the traditional village, the arrival of a Solomonar was seen as a battle of spiritual forces. As the sky turned black and the dragon's roar echoed from the peaks, the villagers turned to their last line of defense, the church bells. It was believed that the sound of a consecrated bell had the power to shatter the Solomonar's spells. When the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, the bell ringer would climb the tower in a frenzy. The rhythmic, heavy tolling of the iron bell was meant to cut through the storm clouds. The sound waves were seen as invisible blades, slicing the wings of the cloud dragon and forcing the beast to retreat. To the peasants below, this was a desperate duel between the priest's prayers and the Solomonar's whispers. But the Solomonar was not easily defeated. Legend says that the truly powerful masters could tie the sound of the bells. With a flick of his birch rein, the Solomonar would command the wind to carry the sound away from the clouds. Or worse, he would command a bolt of lightning to strike the bell tower itself, silencing the Iron Guardian forever. There were moments of strange truce, however. In some regions, it was said that the Solomonar respected the toka, the rhythmic beating of a wooden board. The ancient, primal sound of the wood reminded the masters of the trees in Solomon's. If the toka was played with a certain secret rhythm, the Solomonar would guide his dragon round the village, sparing the houses from the fire of the sky. This was a world where every sound had a meaning and every storm was a conversation. The villagers lived in a constant state of balance, caught between the protection of the cross and the ancient power of the mountain. They knew that while the bells could call to God, only the Solomonar could speak to the dragon. And in the heat of a summer storm, sometimes the dragon was the only thing that mattered. To find the true beginning of the Solomonar, we must travel back 2,000 years. Long before the first churches were built, the Carpathian Mountains were the domain of the Dacian tribes. The ancient Greek historians spoke of a mysterious class of priests known as the Kitistai. These were the cloud dwellers, men who lived without meat or wine, dedicating their lives to the mysteries of the spirit. It is said that they were the chosen disciples of Zalmoxis, the sky god of the Dacians. While the warriors fought with iron and bronze, the Ectocitari fought with the elements. They lived in the high plateaus, where the air is thin and the connection to the heavens is strongest. The Kitisatai were the original masters of the weather, the direct ancestors of what we now call the Solomonar. When the Roman Empire invaded these lands, they were terrified by the wolf people, who did not fear death. But they were even more unsettled by the men who seemed to summon fog and storms to hide their retreats. The Romans saw it as witchcraft, but to the Dacians, it was a sacred dialogue with the earth. They believed the mountains were alive, and the Kuishtai were the only ones who knew the mountains' secret names. As the centuries passed, and the Dacian civilization fell into shadow, the Ectocitari did not disappear. They simply retreated further into the mist, evolving from priests into the wandering sorcerers of folklore. The golden axe of the Solomonar is an echo of the ancient Dacian battle axe. The birch rein is a relic of the shamanic rituals performed in the sacred forests of old. Every time a Solomonar gazes at the sky, he is looking through the eyes of ancestors who watched the Roman legions march. The legend is not just a story. It is a bloodline of resistance against the passage of time, a memory of a time when men did not try to conquer nature, but instead walked alongside it as brothers to the dragon and the storm. Among all the legends of the Solomonar, one object remains shrouded in the deepest shadow. It is the Solomon Ankh, a book not written by the hand of any mortal man. Scribes of the old world whispered that the ink used in its pages was made from the essence of a lightning strike. The book was never meant to be read by the eyes of the uninitiated. To an ordinary person, the pages would appear blank or filled with a language that burned the very mind. The Salomonos did not contain stories or prayers, but the true, secret names of the world. It held the name of the north wind, the name of the first hailstone, and the names of the 7 dragons of the abyss. A Solomonar would spend his entire life studying a single page, for to speak a name was to command the reality behind it. They say that when a Solomonar opened the book, the air around him would grow heavy and the birds would fall silent in the trees. There are stories of curious villagers who tried to steal the book while a Solomonar slept in a hayloft. In every tale, the result was the same. The thief was found days later, staring at the sky, his eyes wide with a terror that no words could explain. The book was protected by a spirit of its own, a shadow that guarded the secrets of the weathermasters. It was a heavy, iron-bound volume that felt as cold as ice to the touch, even in the heat of midsummer. But where did this book come from? Some say it was a gift from the great master in Solomon's, passed down from one generation to the next. Others believe it is a living thing, a piece of the mountain that breathes and watches. When a Solomonar felt his time on earth coming to an end, he would not leave the book to his family. He would carry it back to the edge of a bottomless lake and cast it into the dark water. The book would sink, returning to the depths until the next chosen apprentice was ready to claim it. This is why no museum in the world possesses a copy of this forbidden text. It exists only in the high places, between the mist and the thunder, a silent witness to a power that man was never meant to fully understand. Deep within the heart of the Scolomians, the air does not move. It is here that the 7 students meet their instructor, the one known only as the Great Master. Some old village priests claimed he was the Prince of Darkness himself, luring souls into a pact. But the mountain folk have a different memory, one that predates the concepts of good and evil. They speak of an ancient entity, a titan of the earth, who has forgotten his own name. The master does not speak with words, but with the vibration of the stones and the temperature of the water. He is the one who chooses which of the 7 will never see the sky again. This is the dark core of the Solomonar tradition, the sacrifice of the 7th. While 6 return to the world to command the clouds, 1 stays behind to pay the debt of their power. The 7th student becomes the shadow of the school, a living ghost in the subterranean halls. His task is to sit at the feet of the Great Master and record the movements of every storm on the planet. He becomes the keeper of the dragons, the one who feeds them the darkness of the cave to make them strong. He is the silent engine behind every lightning bolt and every summer gale. Legend says that the shadow student lives for hundreds of years, his skin turning as pale as the mountain marble. He can feel every drop of rain that falls on the surface, thousands of feet above his head. He knows the secret thoughts of his 6 brothers who walk in the sun, and sometimes, when a storm is particularly violent, it is said to be the crying of the 7th, longing for a world he can no longer touch. This sacrifice ensures that the balance between man and nature is maintained. The Solomonars are powerful, yes, but they carry the guilt of the brother they left in the dark. It is a reminder that no one can command the heavens for free. In the world of the Solomonar, every spark of light in the sky is paid for by a soul in the deep. To understand the Solomonar, one must understand the beast he rides. The Balor of the clouds is not the dragon of Western fairy tales. It is not made of scales and fire, but of mist, ice, and pure electrical fury. Those who have seen it through the gaps in a thunderhead describe it as a creature of impossible length. Its body is a serpentine shadow that stretches for miles, weaving through the accumulus clouds like a needle through silk. Its head is wide and heavy, with jaws that do not breathe fire, but exhale a freezing fog that turns rain into hail. The eyes of the Balor are not eyes at all, but twin vortices of glowing white light, flickering with the rhythm of distant lightning. It has no wings, yet it swims through the heavy air of a storm with a grace that defies gravity. The sound of its movement is the low, bone-shaking rumble that we mistake for thunder. A Solomonar does not tame the Balor, he merely directs its hunger. The dragon is a creature of constant, ravenous appetite, seeking to consume the warmth of the earth. When left alone, it would freeze the world in an eternal winter. The Solomonar's birch rein is the only thing that keeps the beast from descending too low. It is a delicate balance of power, a man's will against a monster's instinct. Legend says that the Balor is born from the mountain lakes when the water reaches a certain temperature of darkness. A single drop of water, cursed by a secret word, begins to grow and transform. It develops fins of ice and a heart made of static. By the time it reaches the sky, it has forgotten the lake and knows only the wind. To look directly at a Balor is to see the raw, chaotic energy of the planet. It is the ultimate weapon of the Solomonar, and the ultimate nightmare of the man on the ground. While the world feared the Solomonar's dragon, the forest creatures recognized him as one of their own. In the deep silence of the scalaments, the students did not just learn spells, they learned the primeval tongue. This was the vibration of life that exists beneath all human language. By the time a Solomonar walked into the light, he could hear the thoughts of a wolf and the warnings of a raven. Animals were the Solomonar's secret network of spies. A wolf standing on a ridge was not just a predator, it was an observer, reporting back to the master about the movements of villagers. The birds that circled above a mountain pass were the Solomonar's scouts, searching for the perfect lake to summon a storm. In the presence of a Solomonar, the wild became organized, moving with a singular hidden purpose. There are stories of woodcutters who stumbled upon a Solomonar resting in a clearing. They were terrified to see bears sitting peacefully at the old man's feet and vipers coiled harmlessly around his staff. The animals did not fear him because he no longer carried the scent of a human. He carried the scent of the earth, the stone, and the ozone of the high atmosphere. This connection gave the Solomonar an almost divine omnipresence. He knew when a child was born in a remote valley and when a king was plotting war in a distant city. The wind carried the whispers and the animals translated the secrets. To cross a Solomonar was to cross the entire natural world. But this gift came with a heavy silence. The more the Solomonar understood the language of the wild, the more he forgot the language of men. He became a stranger to his own kind, preferring the company of the mountain eagle to the chatter of the marketplace. He was a king of a kingdom that had no borders, and his subjects were the shadows of the forest. As the 19th century drew to a close, a new kind of thunder began to echo through the Carpathians. It was not the roar of the Balor, but the sound of steam engines and the hum of electric wires. The world was becoming smaller, mapped and measured by men who no longer believed in the unseen. The Solimnies, whence the masters of the horizon, began to feel the heavy weight of the Age of Reason. The magical lakes, where they once summoned their dragons, were being dammed for industry. The secret paths to the Solomonars were being cut by logging roads and tourist trails. The peasants, who once trembled at the sight of a tattered beggar, now looked to the radio for the weather forecast. Bit by bit, the connection between the mountain and the soul was being severed by the blade of progress. But the Solomonars did not fight back with storms. They simply retreated deeper into the mist. There are stories from the 1920s of lone figures seen at the edges of the high plateaus, looking down at the lights of the growing cities with a profound sadness. They knew that their time was ending, not because they had lost their power, but because the world had lost its wonder. Magic cannot breathe in a world that demands a logical explanation for every lightning strike. By the middle of the 20th century, the last of the old masters was said to have performed a final ritual. Legend has it, they led their dragons back into the deepest subterranean lakes and locked the gates of the Solomonars from the inside. They cast their golden axes into the abyss and burned their books of names, leaving only the ashes to be scattered by the wind. The mountain fell silent, and the cloud dwellers became nothing more than a whisper in a grandmother's tale. Yet, even today, in the most remote corners of Bukovina, the old people refuse to point at a storm cloud with their finger. They still speak in hushed tones when the sky turns that unnatural shade of bruised purple. They know that while the Solomonars may have left the world of men, the mountain still remembers. And sometimes, when the wind whistles through a hollow cave, it sounds like a rain being cast into the dark. We live in an age of satellites and supercomputers, where the weather is a series of equations. But even now, in the year 2026, the legend of the Solomonar refuses to fully die. It has evolved, shifting its shape to survive in a world of glass and steel. In the remote valleys of the Carpathians, the name is still spoken with a strange, lingering respect. The stories have moved from the haylofts to the digital world, captivating a new generation hungry for mystery. Modern scholars look at the Solomonar not as a wizard, but as a symbol of our lost connection to the earth. They represent a time when humanity understood that we are guests of nature, not its masters. In the deep forests, hikers still report seeing lone figures who move with an impossible speed through the fog. Some say these are just echoes of the past, while others believe the Solomonars are simply waiting for the moment when humanity tires of its machines and looks to the sky for answers once again. Even the famous Solomonars left its mark on global culture, though few realize its true origin. When Bram Stoker wrote his masterpiece, Dracula, he mentioned the Devil's School in the mountains. He called it the place where the secrets of the world were taught in the dark. But the real Solomonar was never about vampires. It was about the raw, primal power of the atmosphere. It was a sanctuary for those who dared to touch the lightning and live to tell the tale. Today, the Solomonars, the Book of Names, is sought by occultists and historians alike. They search through ancient archives and dusty attics, hoping to find a single scrap of the forbidden text. But the book remains where it was always meant to be, under the black waters of a mountain lake. It is guarded by the silence of the depths, waiting for a hand that is strong enough to hold it. The secrets are still there, hidden in the vibration of the thunder and the pattern of the falling snow. As we conclude our journey into the world of the Solomonar, one question remains. Are we truly alone in the storm, or is there still a master steering the clouds? Science tells us that the weather is a machine of pressure and heat, but folklore tells us that the world is a living, breathing entity with a memory that stretches back to the dawn of time. The Solomonar is the guardian of that memory, the bridge between the human heart and the mountain's soul. Perhaps they haven't disappeared at all. Perhaps they have simply become the wind itself, watching over the peaks they once walked. Every time you feel the air grow heavy before a summer storm, remember the seventh student in the dark. Every time you see a lone beggar on a mountain road, remember the test of bread and water. The magic of the Solomonar is not about spells or dragons. It is about the respect we owe to the forces that gave us life. In the quiet corners of the Carpathians, the legend continues to breathe. It lives in the sound of the church bells and the rhythm of the wooden talker. It lives in the eyes of the old people who still look at the sky with a secret understanding. The age of the Solomonar may be in shadow, but the storm is eternal. And as long as there are mountains, there will be stories of the men who rode the dragons. Thank you for walking this path with us through the mist of the past. If you ever find yourself in the high forests of Romania and the clouds begin to boil above your head, do not look away. Listen to the thunder, because in that roar you might just hear the whisper of the last Solomonar.